What happens when a really deep spiritual vision tries to completely reshape a community skyline and its economy? It's a fascinating mix, isn't it? Ambition, faith, and all the complex stuff that comes with urban development. The proposed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Tower in South Dallas. We want to understand where the developers are coming from, their claims about being part of the community, and we need to explore those really crucial conversations about growth, gentrification that always comes up, and opportunity in South Dallas. It's all about understanding the different angles, the drivers of change. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so let's unpack this. We're talking about a proposal for a huge 25-story tower in South Dallas, the Winners Tower. It's really unique. It's not just about planning permission. It's rooted in, well, a spiritual encounter.
It really is striking. Apostle Raphael Adebayo, who's the visionary here, he doesn't just call it a building project. He calls it the human translation of a spiritual encounter. That phrase itself, it just shifts the whole conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It frames it as this moral thing, a spiritual duty almost. He connects it to a burden of caring for the less privileged, which he apparently wrote about in his book, Moses, David, Jesus, Pastors to the Poor, Homeless, and the Needy. So the idea is this isn't just concrete and steel. It's meant to be a physical answer to that call, specifically aimed at, and this is their term, economic emancipation through creating jobs.
Economic emancipation. That's a powerful term. What does that actually look like in their plan? I mean, how does a tower achieve that? What would it be?
Well, for them, it seems to go beyond just, wages. It
Right.
sounds like it's about creating pathways for people to own things, build sustainable income, maybe community-driven wealth, basically letting residents have more control over their economic future. And practically, the plan is for a major commercial hub. They're projecting something like $200 million in revenue per year based on 2025 estimates. And it's described as mixed use. So offices, maybe shops, housing, a mix.
That's incredibly ambitious, 200 million a year. But, a vision's one thing, filling 25 stories is another. Do they have actual businesses lined up? Or is it still mostly aspirational?
No, that's one of the really interesting parts. The document says they already have committed businesses, they've reserved floors, and it's not just vague interest. They list a media house, a pharmacy concern, a medical suite, a grocer. These are specific commitments.
Right.
And apparently a bank is also showing serious interest. So yeah, that suggests quite a bit of momentum already.
Okay, so they have tenants lining up. How does that connect back to the community focus, the spiritual burden you mentioned? Is that link clear in the plan?
They seem quite intentional about it. They specifically say they're reserving 2 whole floors just for small businesses from the community. And importantly, these businesses would share office spaces at negotiated rates, not, the standard market rates you'd expect in a new tower.
Ah, okay. That's significant.
Right. It's a way to make prime space accessible. And then their own church, the Winners Assembly Christian Church of God, gets a floor. They're also setting up and managing a fully furnished community center on another floor, a shared resource. Plus, the Winners Regional Center gets a floor, and their Development Corporation headquarters gets one too. So they're anchoring their own operations there.
Makes sense.
And critically, they've allocated at least 2 floors for parking, always needed. And looking ahead, they even talk about high-end stuff like condos and suites on some floors. So it's a really comprehensive vision.
It definitely sounds like a massive undertaking, blending all these elements. Now, the document apparently mentions some pushback, questions about their, quote, right to belong to this community.
Yeah.
What's that about? And how do they tackle that charge?
Yeah, that's a fundamental question, isn't it? Who gets to define community member, especially when proposing something this transformative? Their response really leans hard on their history there. They make a point of saying Apostle Adebayo's daughter, Esther Adebayo, was born and raised, quote, on the streets of South Dallas. It's a very personal claim. It highlights, they say, over 20 years of continuous involvement. Church members living there, working there daily. It's basically saying, look, we're not outsiders who just showed up.
So longevity and personal ties are their main argument for belonging. But are there other ways a community might measure that? Like actual impact? Did they address that?
Precisely. They don't just stop at presence. They claim that over those 20 years, their presence has led to nothing but progress and positively changed lifestyle and livelihood. That's a direct quote.
Okay, strong words.
Very. And they get specific about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, saying it's seen unimaginable high-quality commercial activities directly because of their church's presence. Apostle Adebayo even claims, we were the biggest employer of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
Wow. Biggest employer. That's quite a statement.
It is. It positions them not just as residents, but as key economic engines for the area.
Hmm.
They're arguing they haven't just been in the community, they've been actively building it. Catalysts for change, essentially.
Right. So history plus tangible positive impact equals belonging in their view.
Okay.
Now, this inevitably leads to the G word, gentrification. It always comes up in these discussions. The document tackles this head on. What's their perspective? How do they argue this project isn't gentrification?
They're quite direct about it. They argue the term gentrification just shouldn't apply here unless, and this is their quote, the community classifies Apostle Adebayo or the congregation as foreigners. Their main point is ownership. They stress that they own the land where the tower will be built, and they've operated from the building that's currently there for over 10 years. So they state clearly, the project is not displacing any current property owner in the corridor.
Right. That's a key distinction they're making. They aren't buying people out.
Exactly. They're differentiating themselves from, outside developers coming in, buying up properties, and potentially pushing people out through rising costs or whatever. They're saying, we're building on our own land.
Okay, so they draw that line. But they also seem to acknowledge that change is coming to South Dallas anyway, right? Things beyond their control.
Yes, exactly. They don't pretend their project exists in a vacuum. They say an influx of foreigners in the near future cannot be denied. It's happening.
Oh.
And they point to specifics. The big Fair Park upgrade, the Texas high-speed rail project, these massive initiatives are already attracting, quote, big business interest to the area. They even mentioned there's talk of renaming their street. That's usually a pretty big signal of change.
So they see this wave coming, and their tower is positioned how in relation to that, as part of it, or something else?
They frame it as a proactive response. They call the Winners Tower at MLK a pioneer, foresighted response to this inevitable transformation that our community must face.
Okay, foresighted response. What does that mean for other people there?
Well, they suggest their project should be like a signal, a hint to current property owners, the landlords in the community, a hint about the opportunities coming. And they encourage collaboration with them, with the Winners Development Corporation. The idea seems to be work with us, get exposure to resources, and you can navigate this changing environment instead of getting pushed aside by outside money.
That's a really interesting way to frame it, almost like join us to weather the storm, or even benefit from it. But amidst all this talk of collaboration and inevitable change, the document also gets pretty pointed about the opposition, doesn't it? There's some strong accusations.
Oh, definitely. It doesn't pull punches there. That people opposing the tower have, quote, underhand deals with outsiders.
Wow.
Yeah, outsiders who are allegedly buying off community members' properties at ridiculous rates right now, betting on big future profits when the area takes off. They accuse these opponents of wanting to keep, quote, stunted buildings in place to maintain the corridor as a non-profit zone for their own personal gains.
So they're basically saying the opposition isn't about protecting the community. It's about cynical, speculative profit-taking by a few.
That's the picture they paint. Intense, behind-the-scenes battles with accusations of people trying to suppress local development for their own future financial benefit. It really underscores the high stakes.
Okay, let's shift to the nuts and bolts. Building something this big needs approvals, zoning changes. The document mentions democratic principles of the PD4 conversion to MU3. Can you break that down? What are PD4 and MU3, and why is this conversion so critical for them?
Sure. So in city planning speak, PD4 probably stands for a specific planned development district. These zones often have very tailored, sometimes quite restrictive, rules may be limiting building height or types of use, trying to preserve a certain character.
Got it. More restrictive.
Right. MU3, on the other hand, would be mixed use, likely type 3. These zones are generally designed for more density. They allow a mix of things: residential, commercial, retail, often in the same building or area, and crucially, they usually allow for much taller buildings.
Hence the 25 stories.
Exactly. Their argument is that the original PD4 rules were actually designed with flexibility for the future in mind, anticipating economic changes. They're saying, look, with the Texas Rail project, the Fair Park upgrade, these huge changes signal that the time for MU3 zoning is now. It's needed, they argue, to let projects from indigents of the community, that's their term again, meaning locals like them, actually respond to the new economic reality.
Because they need MU3 to build tall. What's the situation with local leaders on this? Are they getting traction?
Well, they acknowledge that the community representatives are thinking about approving a 5-floor project nearby.
Okay, so some movement towards taller buildings.
Right. It shows leadership is considering rezoning, recognizing some need for vertical development. But the Winners Development Corporation is very clear. 5 floors is nowhere near enough. They say 5 floors are not enough to accommodate the pledges of our partners or the needs of their church and regional center. And the bottom line for them, 5 are not commercially viable, not for the kind of project they envision.
So it's not just about wanting to build big. It's that the whole model, the whole job creation facility idea hinges on getting that 25-floor approval.
That's exactly their argument. We need the 25 floors to produce a coordinated, profitable job creation facility for our community. It's presented as a necessity for the plan to work. And they add that, look, it's only a matter of time that projects like this will fill up the MLK corridor anyway because of government plans and outside interests. So their goal, they say, is to help the community better prepare to take advantage of it rather than just letting it happen to them, to lead the charge, basically.
Okay, and one last really crucial question, especially with those accusations flying around. Who's actually bankrolling this? Who owns it? Who's responsible at the end of the day?
They're very explicit about this in the document. It states, the Winners Development Corporation, Inc. are the owners, period, the board, composed entirely of members from the Winners Assembly Christian Church of God. Apostle Adebayo is the president. Everyone else involved, consultants, builders, etc., they're described as hired hands.
So no outside partners pulling strings.
That's what they strongly imply. They state that the financial responsibility anchors only the members of the board who are members of the church and are routinely visible in the community. And they finish that section with a very direct statement. We are not fronting for anyone. It's clearly meant to shut down any speculation about hidden investors or outside control. It reinforces that community ownership message.
So we've just taken quite a deep dive into this vision for the Winners Tower. It's a lot.
Yeah.
We've looked at the spiritual roots, the sheer scale of it, and these really complex, sometimes heated community discussions around it. You've got this project aiming for major economic impact, led by people saying they're deeply rooted there for decades, but it's all happening in this context of big debates about growth, change, and who benefits.
Absolutely. In this case, it really highlights those tricky intersections, doesn't it, between faith, community identity, and economic development. It forces you to think about how we even define who belongs in a community, especially when facing huge changes, and how these different visions for the future can clash so intensely.
So as you're thinking about all this, here's something to chew on. When a place is changing fast, how does a community decide? Not just what gets built, but who gets to lead that building, who benefit? Particularly when you have this blend of, spiritual mission, community work, and big business all wrapped up together. What happens when that inevitable transformation offers huge opportunities, but also real challenges to the people already there? Those are the big questions still hanging over places like South Dallas.